I promised myself that I was going to not make a video about something that annoyed me. I wanted to make something that made me happy while I was making it. Especially after making that Sesame Street video. It was a lot of work and it was a lot of annoying thinking that I had to do. And so I finished it, and then immediately afterwards, Sesame Street was in the news again because autism advocacy groups stopped working with Sesame Street because of some of the material that Sesame Workshop was putting out in relation to its character Julia. Julia on this show is an autistic 4-year-old child. In the episode Meet Julia, you see Big Bird, Elmo, and Abby Cadabby interacting with her. And a lot of people thought that it was going to be a massive step forward in autism representation and that it was good. And now, because of this new material that Sesame Workshop's putting out, they've tainted that character. Like, they've made a mistake in their marketing of Julia. But the thing is that Julia as a character was never good. And the rollout of Julia's character was never good. And it's only now that a lot of people are realizing that Julia wasn't good. So I'm going to break that down a little bit. I was actually planning on writing something about this for Autism Awareness Month, about characters that are autistic, especially in PBS shows. During Autism Awareness Month, they have the week where they show the Meet Julia episode, the episode of Arthur with Carl in it, the Dinosaur Train episode with an autistic character. And I was going to talk about how autism on children's television, especially when it's done in this official way, it can be good. But a lot of the characters that autistic people actually relate to aren't advertised as being autistic. They just exist within the world. Now this has happened, so I'm not even writing. Normally I write a script, and I'm not even scripting this. I'm going to edit this down, I think. But I'm just going to talk about why Julia as a character wasn't good. Now, saying that Julia wasn't good doesn't mean that Julia was bad. There's a gulf between a character being good representation and bad representation, and it's fair to say that most characters exist in that spectrum where it's just okay. You have black characters being voice acted by white people that grow up to be crappy conservative people that talk to Nazis and stuff. You have a non-binary character that has this problematic relationship with womanhood, and it turns into this really weird kind of sexualized character, even though they're like 14 years old. Characters aren't perfect, and the people that write these stories aren't perfect either. So there's always improvement that we can have with the characters that we see in television shows. Even some of my favorite character work in the show Danger and Eggs could be improved with a second season. Amazon gave Danger and Eggs a second season. When I say Julia isn't good, that doesn't mean that people can't see the good things in that episode. It doesn't mean that people can't relate to Julia as a character. It doesn't mean that people can't say that that episode helped them or helped their child or was a good thing to see in the world. All those things can be true, and Julia can still be a bad character. So let me break down why Julia wasn't good. And the first thing that we need to know is that the first episode, the Meet Julia episode, isn't the bedrock of what a character is. The first episode that you meet a character tells you about the character. It shows the kinds of things that you need to have shown in one of the special episodes of autism, that type of thing. But the real bedrock of Julia's characters happen in the episodes that follow that. You don't get the grasp of Julia from one episode. That's impossible. In the same way that you wouldn't get the grasp of Big Bird or Cookie Monster or Grover or Elmo or Abby or Zoe or any character on that show or any show over the course of one episode. If a character shows up for just one episode, then that's all you get, and that means that the character is inherently flimsy. There's nothing to grow upon when you only show up for one episode, right? Julia as a character was introduced 3 seasons ago, and in every season of Sesame Street there are about 25 fully new episodes of content, and in those 3 seasons Julia appears in 9 total episodes. She doesn't appear in any of the promotional material of Sesame Street outside of those appearances within the episodes very much, unless it's about specifically, oh, we had this character Julia that's autistic. Julia doesn't show up to the Tiny Desk concert. Julia doesn't show up in the theme song. Julia doesn't have a presence outside of these episodes that she features in. Julia isn't even the main character in some of these episodes, which I would argue is a good thing. Julia existing as a person that lives on Sesame Street without it being a, hey, here's this episode about this autistic character, is a good thing. It means that it's a real person or a real Muppet that exists within your world. But the issue is the episodes that do focus on Julia, the episodes where Julia participates in the story, she doesn't do anything. You don't learn anything about Julia other than, oh, Julia's very good at finding things that other people can't see sometimes. Or Julia likes to help people. It's Sesame Street. Everybody loves to help people. None of the episodes that focus on Julia develop her as a character, as a fully fleshed thing, other than this vessel that has autism. It is New Sesame Street, and New Sesame Street is absolutely garbage at introducing new people and new characters that aren't Elmo or Abby Cadabby or Grover or Cookie Monster. But within that same span, there was another new character that you might not have heard of, and his name is Rudy. Rudy is Abby Cadabby's stepbrother. Within that same 3-season window between Julia's first appearance and most recent appearance, Rudy has been in 15 episodes. Now, Rudy isn't a character that's important or great representation outside of, ooh, there's some divorced people, but like that's a whole other thing. There isn't a push to advertise Rudy as this big step for Sesame Street, but Rudy has more character development and has been in more episodes and has a personality, unlike Julia. When you look at it like this, it's very obvious that Sesame Street isn't interested in actually using Julia as a full character, and instead she's kind of a prop where you can be like, here's some autism awareness. Autistic people are kind of like this sometimes. Autistic people sometimes can do the Sherlock Holmes things and find these triangles within the mats. That episode that I keep mentioning with the shape hunt is actually one of the worst pieces of media about autism that airs on PBS. While the Dinosaur Train special I absolutely abhor, it does a better job of fleshing out the dinosaurs' relationship with, like, knowing dinosaur facts than it does with Julia. Because Julia just kind of like, oh, there's a triangle. And Alan, a grown-ass adult, is like, oh, where's it? No triangle here. Oh, wow, Julia, you found it. You sure are special and good at doing this thing. So, Julia's character isn't developed. I think that for some people, that's kind of a so what. That happens sometimes. Give them more time. They'll flesh it out. But there's something important about Julia as a character that I didn't realize until I started looking stuff up for this. And that's that Julia is 4 years old. Now, Elmo in the canon is 3. And Abby Cadabby is 5. And Big Bird is 6. Elmo, a 3-year-old, has a very specific grasp on language, which is why he doesn't use pronouns correctly. That's why he says Elmo is doing this, Elmo is doing that. It's because he's a 3-year-old and doesn't have the full ability to be able to communicate. And Abby, who's 5, has more refined sense of word choice than Elmo does, and that disparity is made obvious when you hear them talk. Julia, a 4-year-old, has next to no grasp over language. At no point does Julia have the ability to speak in a way where her thoughts are made obvious. She has no agency as a character. And I mean, part of that is Sesame Street wanting to be like, sometimes autistic people have trouble with language, which is true and that's fair, but there's a line between a person not having the ability to fully say sentences in a way that you understand and a person only being able to speak in single words, and she only speaks in single words. That might be medically accurate. I'm a stickler for looking up my information and not just saying things. So I could be wrong here, especially because I haven't done that level of research into what signs can you find in an autistic person at the age of 4, right? Like, I could be missing something here. It could be very common for 4-year-olds on the spectrum to not be able to speak at all. But I know it's just as common for 4-year-olds on the spectrum to be going into kindergarten, where you have to be able to speak at some level. Not every autistic person is going to be in a special needs classroom. They're in your own classrooms with your children. They're next to your children. They're not cordoned off. They're not people that can't just talk in single syllable words and don't have an ability to imperfectly talk about their dreams, their wants, and their emotions and things. So yeah, Julia wasn't good, and she never was good. Even though she was important for a lot of people, she wasn't good. From the beginning, Sesame Street has been paired with Autism Speaks, an organization that is bad, a very bad organization. The one organization left standing after the others cut ties because of the language that they're putting into their materials. Autism Speaks is kind of the organization that pushes the let's fix the autism in your child type of language that you see in this kind of pamphlet. A lot of people were willing to overlook the connection that Sesame Workshop had with Autism Speaks because they saw that first episode with Julia and were like, this is probably going to be okay, because it avoided a lot of the pitfalls that old media on autism tended to fall into. Like, as much as the Arthur episode with Carl has been transformative as regards to autism, and as much as I like that episode, there are some things that aren't great. Like, Carl is a young white boy that likes trains, is a amalgam of stereotypes. But avoiding those pitfalls doesn't mean that the bigger problems weren't there the entire time. And of course, it took time for people to see them. And hopefully, if you haven't seen them before, you've seen them now. Julia was never good. So what now? I guess that's the question. What do you do now? With all problematic media, every person has a choice on how they deal with it for themselves, whether it's, I'm not going to watch this ever again, or I'm done with this, or I realize this is kind of iffy, but I still like it. It still has these good qualities, so I'm still going to watch it, but I'm going to be aware of its issues while I'm watching it. Or you can just say, well, I'm going to ignore all the issues and I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And though that's really your choice, how you interact with Julia as a character. But don't expect for her to get better after the ties have been cut with these organizations. Don't expect Sesame Workshop to suddenly realize, oh no, we've made a mistake, we better fix it. Because the entire time they've had the same agenda. That's a downer of an ending. If I gotta add one thing, it's watch Danger and Eggs. Please watch Danger and Eggs. It's so good. It's so good. Danger and Eggs is so good. I think I'm gonna end every episode of this show now with saying watch Danger and Eggs because it's really good.
Is that you in the movie?
It was.